right now, at least in the United States, there's a big gap between the exceedingly wealthy people and the not so wealthy people, the middle class or even below middle class, the low class, the poor people, and one of the things about me is my whole life, I've been a poor person. I mean, I came from immigrant parents, and not just immigrant parents that were not very good at spending money. My mom was very frivolous with her spending. My dad would kind of try to make her happy by giving his money away and made a lot of very bad investments in his life. And I learned from my parents of what not to do. I learned from them the right and wrong of saving money, the importance of it. But most of my life, I've been pretty poor. I mean, and right now I'm not even close to being wealthy, right? I'm doing the best that I can, but I'm not close to it. Now, one thing that I have now that I didn't have back then is I have a much sharper mind. Because remember, I've done videos about this before. At one time, I was homeless. At one time, I was literally homeless, and I lost everything about 10 years ago in 2009. And now, in 2020, I own my own home outright. This home that I'm recording this in right now, which is I'm in my office right now in my home, is 100% mine. They can't take it away from me. All I have to do is pay my property tax every year, and it's mine forever. And, that's it. So, I'm very blessed to have had that happen, but I feel like a big reason as to why that happens because I learned from my homelessness and I learned from the mistakes that my parents made. So right now, like I said, there's an issue because people are just not saving enough money. And the big secret to getting, financially secure, financially stable is to save money. You can invest things. There's different things you can do. There's investing, real estate. I've talked about this in other videos, other Speakdoms before, but really it all starts with saving. It all starts with not spending $15 on a cheeseburger or not going out and blowing your money on the new video game because you have to play it today. You could always wait and play it later. You know what I mean? There's things people can do, and it takes a lot of willpower sometimes. But at the end of the day, it's beneficial. I'm going to tell a very personal story here because I always get personal on these things. A lot of people on YouTube, like financial gurus, always talk about you want to save for your retirement because your Social Security might be gone and you never know what could happen, right? Like you don't know what's going to happen when you retire. We're all pretty young. My demographic on this channel is 18 to I think 40, which means that at the oldest, which is 40, and I have older people too, but if you're over 40, you've only got about 20 more years left before your retirement actually can kick in. Now obviously some people retire at 65, some retire at 60, 63. Everybody has their own age range, but typically 65 is the year when people retire, a lot of times. So it's one of those things where you got to prepare for it now. And I've talked about investing and things like that in the past, so check out those videos in my Speakdom playlist. But I want to talk about the importance of saving money, and I want to talk about maybe give you all some tips and some advice on it, okay? And I think the important thing, the main thing that people have to hammer home is no matter how much money you make, whether you make $10,000 a year, $100,000 a year, or $1 million a year, it's not so much about what you're bringing in, but what you're putting out as well. It's actually more important. If you're making $1 million a year, but you're spending $900,000 of it, no offense, but that's really bad. That's really, really bad because you're not investing any of that money into your future. You're not using it to fund a business. Now, I want to clarify. When I say spending 900,000 or whatever, that's not like, I'm not talking about taking that money and investing it or starting a business. We're talking about actually spending it on stuff like buying cars and things like that. And I know YouTubers who, when they started making their first big checks on YouTube, they would go and they would blow all this money on like fancy apartments. I know one guy who did it and he wound up forgetting that you have to pay taxes on that money. YouTube does not take taxes out of your money. You got to pay the IRS. So you have to become essentially a businessman. If you start doing this full-time for monetary reasons, or at least to monetize, if you monetize your videos full-time and you start making some real money, you have to report that to the IRS. If you don't and they find out about it, and nowadays there's software to easily find out about it, you could be in trouble. And the guy who I knew didn't know that. And I don't want to call him a dum-dum, but I mean, it's not his fault because the schools don't teach this kind of stuff. So the main thing you got to remember is spend less than what you make. There's nothing wrong with rewarding yourself once in a while. If you want to treat yourself to a movie or a little vacation, maybe even treat yourself to a video game, whatever. I saved up some money to take my trip to Japan in January of 2020, earlier in the year. And that was me saving up my money. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like I just had that money sitting there that I was willing to throw around, which I had. You know, I do have a lot of money saved. I've learned how to save my money for years and years of screwing up. And one of the reasons that kind of taught me about saving money is that there is no such thing as job security. And I'm telling you that right now. I don't care if you're employed, if you have a contract. You know, there's no such thing as true job security in this world. You might have security for a certain time. You might have a contract that can't be broken for X number of years, but eventually there's a time limit to all that. So there's no such thing as job security. So with that in mind, you have to remember that knowing that if something should happen, right, if you should lose your job, you got to have money saved up. And I would always have an emergency fund. I always had one. I didn't have a set amount. I would just put 3 months of expenses or 6 months, usually less than that, because I was pretty good at being able to find a job when I would lose a job. But it's still helpful, especially if you got kids. If you got kids, you got to up that. Buddy, if you've got children, you have to up that freaking emergency fund. You know what I'm saying? You have to raise it. But the bottom line is to really spend less than what you make. You know, if you take home, let's say you make, I'm just going to throw a random number out. Let's say you make $6,000 every month, right? $6,000, and you look at your budget, and having a budget's very important if you don't have discipline. Actually, a lot of folks think you should have a budget no matter what, and I kind of agree with them. So, if you budget your expenses, you got $1,000 for rent, then you've got, let's say, other utilities, electric, if you pay for gas, water, say it comes out to about $250, just round number. You've got a little bit left over there. Then you got to factor in some food, gas, things like that, cell phone bills, internet bills, whatever you got. And then whatever's left over from that, at that point, you should take whatever's left over and then fund your emergency fund. Put it in a high-yielding savings account or in a money market account. Put it somewhere that you can have access to it. You could even put it in a sack under your bed. I mean, whatever you want to do. Everyone's different. And then when that is kind of set, at that point, you'll want to plan for investing. And then at that point, again, that's a whole different topic. You would have to look into it, because I've got investments all over. I've got real estate investment trusts. I've got stocks. I've got ETF funds. I've got money all over the market in different sectors to make sure that if one goes down, the other one goes up. Plus, I have mutual funds as well, and I have retirement. These are things you have to think about. And I screwed up because I didn't think about these things in my 20s. When I was in my 20s, I was goofing around a lot. I was messing around a lot. I was blowing money. I would take girls out on dates and blow $50, $60, bro. And that is not good money. That is not a good idea, dude. You never want to spend that much. I wasn't cupcaking or simping, but it was one of those things where I felt proud of myself to be that way. And it's a very immature mentality. You got to be a little bit more responsible. You know what I'm saying? Especially on a first date. Never spend that much on a first date, because what if it doesn't work out? What if there's no chemistry? You want to go to a nice restaurant, but not an expensive restaurant. And let me tell you right now, nice and expensive does not correlate. You see what I'm saying? They don't always go together. So that's a different topic, though. Back to the topic at hand. People have to save more money, and be cognizant about it, and be thorough about it, and be consistent about it. A good little exercise that I would do is, if I'm driving and I'm on my way home, and let's say I want to buy something expensive, I want to go to a restaurant, let's say I want to go have sushi, and I love sushi. Everybody who follows me on social media, Instagram, Twitter, you know how much I love sushi. But I don't eat sushi every day. I wish I could eat sushi every day. I don't eat it every day because it's expensive. So I would be driving home, and I would look and think, okay, I could spend $15, $20 on sushi, or I could just not do it and just have a cup of ramen or something like that at home, or maybe grill something like some salmon on my my George Foreman grill. You know what I'm saying? Like something else that is not gonna cost me that much money. And when I think about it like that, it's more so like I'm being rewarded by my own wallet, like I'm being paid, sort of like. Instead of spending $20, it's like I just gained $20. Instead of looking at it as I didn't lose a negative, you look at it as I gained a positive. See what I'm saying? And if you kind of train your mind to doing that, you will, in general, probably spend less money. And then you could take that money and do something positive with it. And I don't mean just, when I say invest, I don't just mean investing in the stock market, real estate, bonds. No, I'm talking about also investing in you, investing in a gym membership if you're out of shape or if you want to get in better shape, investing in books that'll make you smarter, investing in equipment for your, your career. You're a photographer, if you're a YouTuber, invest in that, or investing in education. If you want to go to college or take courses, you don't have to go to college. I might do a whole video about the myth of college. You don't have to go to college, yo. There's different pathways you can take in life. And you might just go to a vocational school. You might just learn how to fix cars. And if you become a mechanic, you can make a lot of money, yo. You can become a chef. I knew a chef that was making $250,000 a year for several years. I'm talking about like for 10 years. This dude was, worth $1 million, multi-millions. Old friend of mine who was a chef, and he was a chef on a boat, and it was like a what do you call it? Like a cruise ship. I mean, he worked his way up to get there, but dude, some of those chefs make a lot of money. I mean, a lot of money. And, there's so many different options. You don't have to go to college for 4 years. You can always just learn the tools and the tricks of the trade. I don't know if Job Corps is still out there, but there are places that will train you. And sometimes these places that will train you on stuff will even go so far as to help you find a job. And some of the workshops cost money, but you can save up for that money by not wasting money. So my whole thing is, I'm just trying to get the message out there to make everybody sort of understand that, with my dad, this is kind of the personal part I wanted to get to. When my dad retired, my dad worked really hard. My dad worked really, really hard in his life. When he retired, his freaking retirement, not pension, he didn't even get a pension. And he had no retirement account, no IRA, no 401k. He had none of that because he wasn't very good with money. He had no idea about it. So he was getting the Social Security checks. It was $800 a month, yo. Now think about this. This is back in my dad retired around 2007, I want to say. My dad had to go back to work and work under the table or work minimum wage because he wasn't allowed to go back to work and get Social Security if you make it over a certain amount of money. But he had to go back to work and never really retired until he got really sick before he passed away. He retired about a year and a half before he actually passed away, 2 years. But before that, he was still working, well into his 60s, deeper into his 60s. And $800 a month, dude, like you can't even, I don't know about where you live, but that's like a 1-bedroom apartment and not a very good one. See what I'm saying? Like most people want like a 2-bedroom. If you got roommates, of course, it makes it easier. But just think about that. You're old, you're beaten down, your health is falling apart. My dad had so much money in medicine that he had to pay for. Like I learned from my dad a lot. And you just don't want to be that guy who's struggling when you're older because you don't have the same kind of energy you did when you were younger. You don't have the same kind of resilience that you had when you were younger. And I helped my dad out, once in a while, but it's one of those things where even I wasn't making that much money at that time. Things would be different if it was me and my dad now, but it just kind of taught me like, dude, nothing is guaranteed, and whatever you think is guaranteed is not always guaranteed. And all you can really do is take personal responsibility. There's so many people out there who are always like jumping at this, and it kind of pisses me off. Oh, let's go picket, let's go riot, let's go cause problems, to make a political message. But it's like, that's great, but how are you going to pay your bills, bro? If you're spending 6 hours out there with a picket sign and nothing is changing, who's going to freaking give you food to put on your plate? You have to take personal responsibility. There's nothing wrong with being an activist, but you have to take personal responsibility in your own. If you're waiting for the government to give you money, dude, you are a fool. You are a fool if you are waiting for the government to save you. You have to do it on your own, man. You have to at least take personal responsibility to put food on the plate, especially if you got family you got to take care of. It's such a cowardly mentality to blame somebody else. You got to blame yourself and take responsibility and say, you know what? I'm not going to end up like Danny's dad. I'm not going to end up broke when I'm old. I'm not going to go in an old folks home. I'm going to retire in my own house. I'm going to die in my own house peacefully in my bed. I'm not going to die in some retirement home or mooching off of somebody else. You know what I mean? Like, I hate to sound morbid, but I mean, that's honestly how it is. Like, when I say die, I don't mean like literally die, even though we all die, but I mean, your final years, you should spend them happy. You work so hard in your life. You've worked so hard and put up with so much bullshit that your final years on this planet should be, in my opinion, at least peaceful without much worry. And if you got money saved up, if you're got retirement accounts, 401ks, IRAs, whatever you want to do, there's a lot of different options out there. It's something you got to do because I'm telling you right now, companies are not going to hire old people like they used to. I remember When I was in IT, they would usually hire between, they wouldn't hire young people either. They usually would hire, the big companies, between 23 and maybe like 45, 46, 47, sometimes 50 if you have a lot of experience. But I never saw anybody over 50 with the exception of maybe one guy who was like 55, and he had been with the company for so long. Like, he started there when he was like in his 30s. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's an older company. And it's one of those things where if you have that kind of, I don't want to say clout, but if you have that equity with the company, great, but not everybody has that. So what happens if you lose your job at like 55, 60? You got to go find like a minimum wage job? Like, that's going to suck, bro. It's going to demoralize you. No way, man. Save your money. Trust me on this one, yo. Please do. I care about you because I'm tired of people fucking up. Because I fucked up, and I don't want you to make the same mistakes. I hope you got something from this, and I'll talk to you soon.